Hi Sunshines, I'm Sunny and welcome to the Wear It Society. So today I am here to do a wrap-up from January to March because I don't really do monthly wrap-ups for two reasons. First of all, I'm very inconsistent with the pace at which I read. Some month I read just one book, some month I read 6, and also I don't really do long reviews, so I think if I did monthly book reviews they would be so uninteresting because they would be so concise. So I thought I would just put it all together in this video and tell you all about the books I've read so far in 2021. So I'm not entirely too sure if I should count this book for 2021 because I've read most of it in December 2020 and just read the last couple chapters on the first week of January, but it is part of my Goodreads challenge, so I am going to mention it now. It is called Meet Cute, Some People Are Destined to Meet. If you don't know, Wear It Society is also a book club and you can go check out our Instagram at Wear It Society. And yeah, this was our book of the month for December. Basically, a Meet Cute is just a cute story of how people met, and it's an anthology of a bunch of those stories written by very popular authors, and it lived up to its name. It was very cute, also very inclusive. There were stories by and about trans people, lesbians, plus size people. It was very diverse, very sweet. There's just one or two of the stories that I didn't love, but the rest of them were really entertaining. I don't know if I would recommend it, maybe if you're looking for a light fluffy read, but yeah, not the best book, not the worst either. It was just really sweet. The next book that I read was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. It is one of the 2 James Baldwin books that I've read so far this year, and it was really good. It is non-fiction. It is an sort of essay, which kind of is a mix between a memoir of James Baldwin's life and specifically his childhood and teenagehood in Harlem as a black man, and it is also a sort of statement about race, and I think I loved it. The reason why I say I think I loved it and I'm not entirely too sure is because the writing style and the words were a little bit complicated for me to grasp as a non-native English speaker, so I had some trouble. I had to reread some paragraphs several times to truly understand them, and I think I will definitely come back to it once I've read more difficult books. It's not difficult, it's just difficult for me who's not a native speaker. But even though I did not grasp some of the things he was trying to say, all of the things that I've understood, I wholeheartedly agree with him, and I just love reading about his experiences. I especially loved reading about when he met other civil rights activists, people from his generation. It was very interesting to see how they were rooting for the same thing but had very different ways to go about it. And yeah, it's a very short, so I think it's doable. If I could do it, I think most people can read it, and it was good. Still on the James Baldwin train, I read Giovannis Room. Should I say it? I'm gonna say it. I think this was my favorite book of 2021 so far, along with The Picture of Dorian Gray, but it's not in my Goodreads challenge yet because I have one chapter left. So I think this was my favorite book so far. It is by James Baldwin, but this time around it is fiction, and it is about a young man in Paris who meets this Italian man also living in Paris, and we kind of follow their story. They are gay men in the 50s. It's very complicated. They kind of both descend into a very sad, deep spiral. This is more character driven, and there's not a lot of plot twist, but the ending is very impactful And if you like very deep, dark, depressing, but reflective and beautiful stories about gay people, this is for you. This was definitely for me, and the writing was so beautiful, so poetic. I underlined so many paragraphs just because they were so beautiful. I wanted to remember them and be able to come back to them and read them again. I'll put one of my favorite passages on the screen. And yeah, just overall a gorgeous read. I would recommend it to absolutely anybody. And I hope if you do read it, you like it as much as I did. And this definitely gave James Baldwin a big place in my heart. And I don't really have a favorite author yet, but I think he is a strong contender, and he might be. As soon as I read more of his work, if I love it as much as I love this one, he's definitely gonna turn into one of my favorite authors. The next book that I read, I don't have a physical copy of right now because I think I've lost it or someone borrowed it. I really don't know what I've done with this book, but it is Chanson Douce by Leila Slimani. The English title, I believe, is The Lullaby. I really like this book. I think it was very well written. It is a psychological thriller following this family of two parents and two kids. The father is working all the time, so he's not very present, but he's very loving when he is present. And the mother is having what I could call postpartum depression. She's not clearly diagnosed in the book, but what she's going through and her experience seems like what could be called postpartum depression. And she's very unhappy staying at home with her kids. She loves her kids to death, but she doesn't love the domestic life, and she doesn't like being a stay-at-home mom. It's really not for her. And so they decide to hire a nanny, and when the nanny comes into their life, at first it's paradise, absolute paradise. Everything is going so well. She's the perfect woman. The kids get along so well with her. The parents love her and take her on trips. But as the story goes along, you start noticing more and more weird things about the nanny and strange behaviors and strange reactions from the kids around her. It kind of descends into madness, and you get into the psyche of the nanny, who is clearly not well. And you see how all of this unfolds, and it is dark. It is a psychological thriller, but I love it. I wish I read more of this genre of books, because whenever I think about books that get me really entertained, they were all like psychological thriller kinda. So yeah, love this one, would recommend it. Get it in French if you understand French, get it in English if you understand English, because I believe it was translated, and I like this book. Next book is Spatulae Ever After by Stephanie Yeboah. The subtitle is A Black Fat Girl's Guide to Living Life Unapologetically, and that cover, man, that cover and that title sold me from the moment I saw them. I believe this was a very good book. It is non-fiction. It is basically Stephanie's journey as a fat black woman. She starts from childhood and where she is now, and how she went from this very scared girl who was bullied and struggling mentally and struggling with self-image to becoming a plus-size fashion blogger and influencer, and someone who loves her body and she's one, I would say she's definitely a very influential voice in body positivity, fat acceptance movement, whatever you want to call it. And I really liked it. I thought it was a perfect mix between personal experiences and actual data, like actual information. I would recommend this to any plus size person, but also if you're not plus size but want to get kind of into the mindset of what a plus size person has to go through being existing in a big body, especially women of color, especially black women, and especially dark-skinned black women. You should read this book, and it also goes into the origins of body positivity, which I think is really important because there's very often debates about, is body positivity for everyone, and no, it should only be for plus-size women, no, everybody is welcome, even skinny women. And you know, it's a debate, and I think that knowing the origins of a movement before deciding who should be welcomed or not is very important, and she goes into how the movement was born. So yeah, and she gives so many valuable advice. That was such a pocket of sunshine, even though it talks about such a difficult subject. The only thing I would change about my reading experience, it's nothing negative about the book itself. I loved it, but the only thing I would change about my reading experience is I think I would listen to the audiobook rather than read the physical copy, I mean the Kindle copy, because the way the book is written very much sounds like actually spoken conversation rather than text book. I don't know if I make any sense. Once again, English isn't my first language, so I'm trying my best to describe concepts that are in my head but that I have no words for. But yeah, basically, if you want to read this, I would say read the audiobook, and maybe if you can afford to, maybe have both the physical copy and audiobook so that you can listen to the audiobook but also look at those beautiful illustrations, and you know, you can screenshot the list of influencers to follow and all that jazz. So yeah, good book, would recommend it for anyone struggling with body image issues, no matter what your weight is. And I think Stephanie did a really great job. Also, I love following her on social media. She's hilarious, she is inspiring, and she's beautiful, and yeah, only good things to say. Then I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, as well as the second book in the series, which is The Wicked King, also by Holly Black. This is a trilogy. I still haven't read the last book, which is called Queen of Nothing, but let's review the two first books of the series together because they have this exact same opinion about both of them. I haven't read young adult fantasy in so long. I mean, I've read Cinderella is Dead for our book club, but I mean a book that I personally picked for myself. And how can I say, I just missed it so much, and I didn't realize until I've actually picked up a book that was young adult fantasy. So at this point, I realized that I forgot to basically explain what this book was about. So here it is, you can pause to read the synopsis. The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King were so good, okay? I hate when people are like very snobbish about young adult, like, ooh, they're not real books, they're like not intellectual enough for me. I don't care if it's not intellectual for you. Be a fun person, Jan. Stop being a negative Nancy and admit that young adult fantasy slaps. And The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King absolutely slapped, okay? We have to admit that. Stop being a pretentious prick and just say it already, okay? Now that this is established, I love these books. I just couldn't put it down, and anytime I stopped reading the book and was doing something else, I was thinking about the book and so eager to get back to the book. They were both so addictive. And one thing that I have to say is that usually when I read trilogies, usually I love the first book and then it kind of goes downhill from the second book. But this time around, I think this is the only time it's happened beside Hunger Games. I've loved the second book just as much as I loved the first book. Maybe more, maybe as much, I'm not sure, but I didn't like the second book less than the first one, which says a lot. And yeah, what else can I say? I'm just so excited to read the last book. I'm just waiting for one of my best friends to pick it up because we're gonna buddy read it because we've read the first two books kind of around the same time. And yeah, also, like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Bisexual panic. If you are a bisexual reading this book, Jude, aka pretty girl fighting with a sword, and Carden, handsome, tall prince with a dark side. Come on, how can you not, like, come on, okay? Then I've read All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. It is a memoir about a young black boy and his story growing up, how he came about his identity, how he's handling it, living at the intersection of two communities, two identities that are very hard to navigate through, and how it is being black in the gay community. Yeah, it was really good, very touching, very inspiring. I'm usually a little bit skeptical about people who write memoirs when they're so young, because I think he's in his late 20s or early 30s, but he did it so well. He had interesting things to say, and I think I would recommend it to any gay person or any person kind of questioning themselves and struggling with their identity, because he navigates the subject so well. And I just think he has a really good voice, and I really loved it. It was a beautiful thing to read, and it's also rather short. If you don't have much time to read, then this could be a good option. Then I've read Rage Becomes Her, The Power of Women's Anger by Soraya Chemali. It was our book club's book of the month for January and February. I absolutely loved it. It is a non-fiction book about, well, you guessed it, women's anger and the power that it holds, and how we're repressed into not expressing it, and how it's weaponized against us. It talks about the concept of self-silencing. I could talk about this book for ages, but no use in doing that, because we did a live stream with the book club, and the video is up on this YouTube channel, so you can go check it out. It's called Rage Becomes Her live stream, something like that. You cannot miss it. The book cover is in the thumbnail, and yeah, if you want to hear more about this book, then definitely go watch the best of the live stream on our YouTube channel, because we've reviewed this book over and over. I'm not gonna do it again. 100% would recommend every single woman or woman passing person in the world to read it, because even if you're not a woman but are perceived as a woman, I believe that a lot of the things that are said in this book could apply to you as well. So yeah. Then I've listened to the audiobook for What We Talk About When We Talk About Fat by Aubrey Garden.
Doctor's office, the first time my face flushed with shame. I had just learned overweight.
It is a book, you guessed it, a non-fiction book about being fat. It really focuses on America, but I think it can apply to big people everywhere in the world, and I read it a little bit after reading Fattily Ever After, because I wanted to read more books on being fat and the implications that living in this fat body has. So I got this audiobook, and it was so interesting. The author does state a lot of her personal experiences, but she's very much more focused on fat phobia in general and not just in her personal experience. And she provides us with a lot of information, like the fact that law does not really protect fat people. She goes into the different types of violences that are done against big people, medical violence, sexual violence, and just, you know, bullying. And there are some things that I didn't even know existed. And yeah, it was so interesting, but also so motivating, because I feel like knowing more about fat phobia as a phenomenon makes me stronger and makes it easier for me to fight it and to, you know, love myself in spite of it. So yeah, a good read. Once again, I think my review would be pretty much the same as the one that I did for Stéphanie Yeboah's Fattily Ever After. Yeah, only good things. And the last book that I've read and finished this year is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera.
I'm not naive about dying. I know it's going to happen, but I don't have to rush into it.
It is a young adult romance which Pretty much all of the story feels very much contemporary, but there is one sci-fi element, which is that basically in the world, in the time that they live in, the main characters, there is this service that knows when you're going to die, and 24 hours before your dying moment, you get a call telling you, hey, you are going to die today. Within the next 24 hours, could be in 1 hour, could be in 23 hours, but you're going down within the next 24 hours. We don't know how you're gonna die, we don't know when exactly, but you won't see another day on this planet. And basically we follow two point of views from two boys who get that notification on that day that they're going to die soon. They meet on this app called The Last Friend, which is an app for people who get this notification and want to meet people before dying, don't want to die alone. And so since they're both gonna die very soon, they message each other on the app and decide to meet up and spend their last 24 hours together. And basically the rest of the book is pretty much a montage of the things they do before they die. And obviously there's a romance sparking, so they are both gay. I think one is gay, one is bisexual, but yeah, they both like guys, and so obviously there's a romance sparking in there. So I have very mixed feelings about this book. Okay, so I thought that the story was very sweet, very unique. I love the concept and the idea behind this book, like getting a notification, spending your last 24 hours, carpe diem, seizing the day, all that jazz. It's like one of my favorite tropes in a way. I don't know why, but yeah, I love the idea, the concept. However, I think that there's a few things that kept me from really engaging in this story. First of all, the writing style was very simplistic, and while I don't mind, you know, a little simplicity, not everything has to be like, ooh, breathtaking. I still like a little bit of effort and poetry in words. Like when I read, I want the words to make me feel the story, not just like, you know, I just don't want to see the images go through my mind. I want to also feel them through the words, if that makes any sense. And you don't even have to have a complex writing style to do so. But I think there are ways to do so, and I didn't really get that. And also, I had trouble kind of connecting with the characters because the book starts off like literally 24 hours before they die. So in the book you only get a day's worth of information about them, which makes it hard to really connect with the characters and like get attached to them. So I really wish that the book was a little bit longer and had a bit more time to, you know, introduce us to the characters and maybe show them a little bit of a backstory before we get into this whole, ooh, you're gonna die soon. Because yeah, I had trouble like really engaging in the story. So not a bad read, not a great one. I thought it was entertaining, but I also wouldn't go out and recommend it to everybody and say, wow, it's such a good book. Like, yeah, it's here, it's there. So yeah, I would say that so far my reading year has been decent. It is not the worst. I don't know if it is the best or not. Only time will tell. I feel like, you know, many of the books that I've read were books that I bought on my Kindle and on Audible, and I think that I really need to get around to reading the books on my shelves, because I always end up really loving a book when I've bought the physical copy. And I think that the reason for it is because if I buy a physical copy of the book and add it to my bookshelves, it's because I'm really drawn to it. Like there's something about the book that draws me to it and that makes me want to read it. Yeah, I think that if so far my best reads have been the book that I own, I need to really get around to that huge TBR. So yeah, I think that is what I take away from my reading year so far. I hope you've enjoyed this wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, or what book you have been reading so far. What was your favorite book of the year so far? let's all chat about books in the comments. Don't forget to follow my personal Instagram at sunnynacia, as well as my YouTube channel, which is Sunny Maria. And you can also follow the book club's Instagram at Warrag Society, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not subscribed already. Go check out the rest of my videos on the channel, and go check out Sumaya's video, who is another host on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.